To Hangout. Hi everyone, welcome to Hangout with a Book. We are here at the Garfield Heights Library of the Cuyahoga County Public Library. My name is Sarah Carpenter, and I am a librarian at the Cuyahoga County Public Library.
Hi everyone, my name is Megan Barrett, and I am also a librarian at Cuyahoga County Public Library. Today's Hangout is actually going to be a bit different from the Hangouts that we've done in the past. Sarah and I were actually lucky enough to interview Carrie Mesrobian, who's the author of Sex and Violence, and we're going to share part of that interview with you tonight.
It was so much fun, super exciting. In addition to the interview, we're going to spend some more time talking about other books. We'll share titles that are similar to Sex and Violence. And we're also going to share some of our exciting new upcoming releases.
Yes. And as always, if you would like to join in the conversation, please feel free to submit questions or comments in the Q&A feature of the Hangout. And if you want to vote on questions or comments, you can actually click the +1 next to the questions. And we will try to get to all of your questions as best we can.
Okay, and in the future, we may be joined by some other staff members from a different branch. Their names are Audrey and Shannon. Right now, they're not with us, but they may in the future.
Yes, so we're experiencing some technical difficulties. Even if they can't join us in person, they may be able to join us via questions or chat as well. So hopefully we will hear from Audrey and Shannon at some point tonight. Okay, so before we dive into the Carrie Mesrobian interview, I thought it would be great to talk about some upcoming adaptations. Specifically, I wanted to bring up the movie adaptation of John Green's Paper Towns. It's recently begun filming. John Green has shared videos of behind the scenes on his Vlog Brothers YouTube channel. He's had a ton of pictures on his Instagram, and we actually do have links to both a video on YouTube from Vlog Brothers and to his Instagram if you want to take a look if you haven't had a chance to. But anyway, Paper Towns, what do we think about casting?
I'm excited about it. Originally, when I pictured the casting of Margot, one of the characters, I always pictured her as an Ellen Page kind of girl from Juno type actress, but I'm okay with Cara Delevingne, the girl that they've cast as Margot. She really hasn't been in anything else that really isn't. I don't think that's going to affect kind of how I see that actress. So I'm okay with it. I'm in a good place with it.
Okay. I have to say I was not, so I was on IMDb and I was checking out the cast for Paper Towns, and other than Nat Wolff, who's playing Quentin, I actually wasn't familiar with really many of the other people, but he was, if you aren't familiar with the name, you would probably recognize Nat. He was Isaac in The Fault in Our Stars. And I'm actually really okay with that casting. I thought he was great as Isaac, so I'm interested to see what he kind of brings to this new role. What do you think about it, Sarah?
I mean, yeah, he was hilarious in Fault in Our Stars and one of my favorite characters in Fault in Our Stars, and I think he did it really well.
Yes.
And so I'm super excited to see kind of what he's going to do with Paper Towns.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah, so that's super exciting.
Nice.
In other news, earlier this month, Maggie Stiefvater happily announced that her novel Scorpio Races has been optioned by Focus Features. Stiefvater's other notable novels are her Raven Boys series and her Linger series. So Raven Boys is like a modern-day King Arthur, Holy Grail type thing, and Linger is a shifter werewolf series. On her blog, Stiefvater commented, more than any of my other books, this is the one I long to see on the big screen, and it's also the one that has the most aggressive interest since its publications. So fingers crossed it makes it to filming. If you would like more information, we have included a link to her blog.
Yes. I'm really excited about this too. I loved Scorpio Races. I actually listened to the audiobook, which was really great. If you haven't, I believe won one of YALSA's amazing audiobook awards too.
It's a Prince Honor book.
It is a Prince Honor book.
Prince Honor or winner.
It's a Prince Honor.
Yes.
But fantastic story. And I'm excited that because Maggie has such a role, I guess, in the adaptation, and we were talking before, I think we've all seen adaptations that just kind of fell short or weren't our favorite. So the fact that the author is taking such a big role in that.
She takes such a great role in all of her different novels. She's very protective of her work. Mm-hmm. She creates soundtracks, like personal soundtracks where she actually plays the music for her novels. She creates artwork for her novels. Currently, she's working on a tarot card deck for the Raven Boys series, which looks awesome. It's like in colored pencils. And I mean, she just is so protective of her work that she says, I would rather no movie than a movie I don't think my readers would appreciate if it's in my power. I mean, I respect that. Like, absolutely. I totally respect that, and I appreciate that. Like, I don't want some flimsy representation of one of my favorite books. So I think she's going to knock it out of the park. If it makes it to film, I think it's going to be good.
Yeah, so fingers crossed it will actually make it to film. Yeah,
because she's had other possible adaptations out there, but creative differences have kind of made those fall to the wayside. So hopefully it will actually make it to production.
Yes. Fingers crossed.
So, yeah, fingers crossed.
All right. So let's actually jump into the interview. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to show you tonight a segment of the interview. When Sarah and I set out to interview Carrie Mesrobian, we were hoping to get a 15-minute interview, and actually the interview was so great and her responses were just so awesome. We ended up with a close to 40-minute interview, which is too long to show the whole thing here, but we're going to show you a segment, and then we will also share a link to the entire interview in the showcase feature. Please absolutely watch it. I mean, not only does she answer our questions about sex and violence, which is our book this month, but she also talks about her newest book, which actually just came out, Perfectly Good White Boy. It came out last month. She talks about her involvement in the SVYA Lit Project, which is how teen authors are coming together to talk about issues in teen books and how teen books and the issues they deal with can be used to kind of start the conversation about sexual violence and consent. She talks about her writing style. She answers
she talks about so much, and it's so interesting, and just the idea of not showing everyone what all was said. Right. We couldn't have that, so we want you to be able to see the awesomeness that we got from Carrie Mesrobian.
That is this interview,
yeah. It involves zombies, pretty white boy, and pretty good white boy, and
country songs.
All sorts. So many different things.
Yeah. So if you want to take a look now, we're going to share the first couple minutes of that interview.
We are excited to be joined by Carrie Mesrobian today. Carrie is the author of Sex and Violence. Thank you so much for taking time to talk with us, Carrie.
Hi, Carrie. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're so excited that you're here. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Okay. Well, I live in Minnesota. I was born here. I used to be a high school teacher. And I now just teach creative writing at a place called the Loft Literary Center here in Minneapolis. I have one husband and one kid and one dog. And I live in the suburbs, and it's very, very glamorous, just like it sounds. There's my background for you.
Okay, some might consider the title and the subjects covered in your novel taboo. Why did you select sex and violence as the title?
Well, I actually didn't select it. I throw my editor under the bus about this all the time. The original working title I queried under was The Cupcake Lady of Tacoma. And I know, kind of different.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah, so anyway, when my editor acquired it and everything, he's like, no, we can't call it that. And he hasn't really given me a lot of reasons for that, but he said, let's just call it Sex and Violence as the working title, because those are the two things that you're dealing with in the book. And I was like, yeah, that's a little unsubtle. I'm not a fan. And it's kind of hard to, your parents can't really brag about their kid writing a book called that, we just kept it as the working title because I am terrible at titles. I couldn't think of anything else. And so we kept it, and then as we were editing the book, it just felt like, this is what we are talking about. There's the irony, I guess, is that there's not a lot of sex scenes or violent scenes. There's very few actual scenes. It's mostly they're talking about sex, they're talking about violence, or they're summaries of it. So you think you're getting one thing, but you're not. And so it just kind of grew on me. And then that Wall Street Journal article came out, the Megan Cox-Skirton thing, where she was like, there's so much darkness and evil and YA and all that garbage. And so I just emailed my editor and I said, well, why don't we just call it Sex and Violence? That's what they're accusing us of publishing anyway, so let's just double down. And then he said, yeah, it's growing on me too. So then that's why we called it that. It's remains difficult to defend, and to tell people I've just met that that's the name of my book. A lot of romance blogs reviewed it, thinking it was like 50 Shades of Grey for teenagers, I think.
There.
In other words, it's one of those things where it wasn't really my choice. And like most things with publishing, the things that you interface with directly as a reader, the cover, the flap copy, indeed the title, are not decisions that the writer necessarily makes. So it's important for people to realize that, because the writer may come to the book deal or whatever with the product, but then it's going to be remade in a lot of different ways in order to be sold. So I remember a review was like, who let her name her book that? And I was like, nobody lets you do anything in publishing. You just do what you're told in a lot of ways. So yeah, so that's the story of the title.
Nice. All right. So why did you want to write Evan's story? Like, why his particular story?
Well, originally it was Baker's story. She was telling the story, and I felt like, well, I mean, it's probably somewhat obvious that I'm sort of a stand-in for Baker. Like, I very much agree, coincidentally, with a lot of the things she thinks, but I was going along, and then I did this thing in the draft where I was like, I don't really understand this character. I think I want to understand him more. So I let him tell the story for a while, and I just liked him better. He was more fun to be in his head. I think it was because it was exotic, whereas Baker is like, that is the landscape of my mind, is how she looks at things. It's not that it's not that it's not uninteresting. It's just that it's very familiar. So, and it was a challenge to try to figure out what in the hell boys actually think about things, because I don't really know. They say so little, and I used to, when I was a younger girl, assume that they didn't think about anything. That it was just sort of like a flat line, and so trying to get into his head was a puzzle, and I liked that. And then I also really have always been curious about what men actually think, because they posture so much, they seem so composed and collected and above it all, and I have never understood how they move through how are they in charge of everything, but they're so calm about it? I don't really get it. So it was kind of an exploration of something I was already curious about, what's going on inside the male brain. Obviously, I haven't figured that out completely because it was just one character, but that's where I think the enjoyment of it came for me.
That's great. Interesting. Well, you kind of started talking about this before, but did the reaction of parents, and especially as a parent yourself, factor into how you crafted the story?
No. I guess I just try to, when you haven't written anything that's been published widely before, you're sort of accustomed to nobody ever seeing what you do. So that's how that book kind of just, it came about, where nobody was going to see it, and I didn't have any embarrassment about it. I'm also used to, in my family, being the kid who is always getting in trouble anyway and is always saying the crass, vulgar thing, and so it kind of, it's sort of my role, so I didn't feel like I was going to shock anybody by being vulgar or blunt. And I guess the other thing is that when you, I just feel like people don't talk about sex or sexual issues enough anyway. They only talk about them when something goes wrong or if something's really out there, like, you know, some people with weird kinky practices, and we all go, oh my God, you know, like 50 Shades of Grey will make us all lose our minds. But, you know, we don't really talk about it with any sort of common, you know, comfort. And I just think people need to, because it's sort of, it's this thing that all these people do every minute of every day, and they all live to tell about it. You know, it's not always fatal, sex. So I think that putting it out on the table and finding out what kinds of biases and whatnot that especially young men grow up with is super important, because we sit here and worry about rape culture and consent, and we worry about women not being valued, and then we just assume that, you know, we're not going to solve that problem by being completely ignorant of what's going on in the male brain. So I feel like that's another piece of it too, if I want to be kind of soapboxy about it. Like, I really think we need to acknowledge what we're teaching boys and be honest about it, and let them be honest about it without, you know, feeling like they're going to be instantly branded as, you know, evil, sinner, sexist pigs, and get to a place where we can maybe talk about it with a little more comfort. I'm not particularly, I guess, I'm not I don't go out and make waves on purpose, and I feel like I'm fairly boring and conservative in my own boring, married, white, heterosexual way, but I just think people need to talk about sex more, because the fact that it's hidden and a secret, it doesn't make any sense to me. And yeah, I don't know where that question started, but I just went in a lot of okay.
No, it's great.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, well, welcome back. So that was just a snippet of the awesomeness that was the interview with Carrie Mesrobian. And let's get into the discussion part of today. In the interview, Carrie mentions that the book's original working title was The Cupcake Lady of Tacoma. So what do you guys think about the Cupcake Lady's relationship with Evan?
Before I jump into that, I'm going to see if Audrey and Shannon, our staff that we're going to try and join us remotely, if they can hear us and join us. Audrey and Shannon, are you guys there? Can you hear us? No. Okay. So they can hear us, but unfortunately we're having audio issues. So they are going to, I know, which is a shame, so they may join us via the chat feature or the question feature to kind of throw in their 2 cents too. Okay. So back to the question. All right. The Cupcake Lady of Tacoma. So throughout the book, Evan kept alluding to his relationship with the Cupcake Lady. So I didn't really know what to expect, and it wasn't until and by the way, spoiler alert, I guess I probably should have said that from the beginning, because I'm going to jump all the way to the end, because it was right at the very end.
Like the last 2 pages.
Yes, that we actually discover what happened between Evan and the Cupcake Lady. And basically, the Cupcake Lady was Evan's first sexual experience. Mm-hmm. She was an adult at the time, so he was, I think, 15.
He was 15, and she was 18 or 19.
Yes, so she was an adult at the time, and since he was a minor, I mean,
that is sexual assault.
That is sexual assault,
illegal.
And yes, absolutely. So, you know, I mean, clearly, I don't think it was a good relationship or a healthy relationship or anything that you would want, you know, that would be in the vein of a healthy relationship. And they only had one sexual encounter. The Cupcake Lady, after the fact, I think kind of realized, because they had been drinking too, that what she was doing was wrong. So then she just stopped talking to him altogether, which I think just magnified and made a bad situation even worse.
Well, yeah. And I mean, Evan even says that this whole experience just totally messed him up, because he talked about how dirtbag Evan, who he refers to throughout the novel as, you know, his predator prey, kind of looking for sexual relationships in every girl he meets. He was saying that dirtbag Evan didn't exist until after this whole encounter. So I think that, I mean, it's possible that the events in this book wouldn't even have taken place had this assault not occurred.
Yes.
You know,
I agree
because
with that.
he may not have been with Colette at all, and then the subsequent violence wouldn't have occurred.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was just so many different things that I just felt so terrible for Evan. I mean, like throughout the novel, Baker even says that he doesn't say much.
Yep.
It takes a long time for him to put two words together.
Yes.
And when he was explaining about the cupcake lady, he was saying how he was becoming very talkative because they were both drinking alcohol. And so he was telling her, like, he was bearing his soul to her, telling her about, you know, his mother, his father, like everything. And then he's like, yes, I'm so excited. I finally can open up to somebody. Like, he was more excited about being able to open up to somebody than actually having sex, because that wasn't a priority for him at that time. But then when, like, she completely shut him down, didn't say anything to him, like, I mean, it traumatized him. And
yeah. So then after
terrible.
the fact, and then after, because I think, while I was reading the book, there were so many times where I thought maybe he was going to open up or something,
Right.
but, you know, and everything he was dealing with after the incident, you know, at the boarding school where he was attacked, and, you know, he was clearly suffering from PTSD and couldn't shower without, you know, without
a lock on the door.
Yes, without a lock on the door, so he was having to take, you know, the shower, like his baths in the lake.
I mean, and like, it's just, so he's going through this second experience, and he hasn't even had a chance to deal with the first. Like, he just had so many different things that were going on with him, and I just felt terrible.
I did too.
Like,
I did too. It was,
and I'm glad. I mean, because, and I believe that because he's writing this letter to Colette at the end, explaining who the cupcake lady is, I believe that he's on the road to healing, and working through his problems and talking about them.
Well, and he's seen a therapist too, so he's seen a therapist. I mean, even just the act of writing the letters, even though he never sent them.
But he sends the last one, I think.
Because the therapist had suggested, like, now I want you actually to write something that you sent. But, you know, actually talking to someone about it and, you know, even starting to work things out with his dad.
So, he's got a long way to go, but I'm just so glad that he is able to kind of start along that path, and that he can now begin opening up to other people as well, because he's been shut down by so many people. So, yes.
It was a great book, and truly watch the interview if you have time. It's fantastic. And, I mean, we touched a little bit on it here, but just dealing, you know, I think a book like this fits in so well with the SVYA Lit project that Carrie's involved with because of the issues that the book deals with.
Well, and the sexual assault that occurs between the cupcake lady and Evan, I mean, it's not something that, like, right off the bat you go, oh, that is rape or that is sexual assault. But then, like, when you sit there and think about it and realize she's an adult, he's a child, like, that is not okay.
Right.
I mean, and it shows that it doesn't matter how the assault occurs, that the effects can be just so wide.
Absolutely.
And it can be so damaging.
I agree.
Yeah. So, I
thought it was a great book.
I thought it was a
Sarah
great
did
book.
too.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely brings us some interesting issues.
Absolutely. So we actually wanted to share some titles with you that are similar, so read-alikes. I have one. It's Reality Boy by A.S. King. And just incidentally, before I get into kind of my 30-second commercial about Reality Boy, Carrie Mesrobian and A.S. King actually recently, I believe it was last week, hosted a Google Hangout together where they talked about their books and SVYA Lit project, and we actually have a link for that as well in the showcase section, so definitely check that out. Yes, very exciting. Okay, so Reality Boy. like Sex and Violence, it is a teen main character who's dealing with lots of emotional issues. Gerald, who's the main character, when he was 5 years old, he and his family were on a reality TV show. Think like Super Nanny or Nanny 911. That was the type of show that he was on. And now it's 12 years later. Gerald is 17, and he is emotionally damaged, and he's just dealing with lots of rage issues. So people are still kind of, and even just the public will come up to him and refer to his time on the show because, not to be a spoiler, but some of the stuff he did was very memorable, and he's kind of become like infamous because of it. So everyone's kind of waiting for him to snap. But as the book kind of progresses, Gerald is trying to learn to control himself, and he is trying to choose to create possibilities for himself that he never really knew he deserved. So Reality Boy, A.S. King, awesome, awesome book. Definitely check it out.
I mean, it's a great novel. What with all the reality TV and how it actually impacts like real lives.
Like, those are real people on reality TV shows.
On reality TV shows, that may not specifically be real, but the people that it impacts are real, and it was a really great novel, truly. The real life that I chose is called Faking Normal by Courtney S. Stevens. This is actually one of her first novels. Two broken people meet and use the support of each other to pick up the pieces. Alexi experienced something traumatic over the summer. You don't really know what exactly it is in the beginning, but she refuses to talk about it. And instead, she's begun hurting herself. She will scratch her neck, and she uses rituals to cope with what happened to her. And then the other main character's name is Bodhi, and recently his mother has died, or she was murdered by his father, and he is now in jail. So now Bodhi is homeless, and they're both going through many different issues, and so they connect through grief and pain. Each pushes the other to confront their issues and really confront what happened, and work through it and begin the healing process. I really liked this novel. It reminded me a lot of Speak, with a combination of sex and violence. And it was nice to have both the male-female main characters. So that was a nice view. So that was really It was a great book.
And then we'll try one last time to connect with Audrey and Shannon. See if they can hear us. Audrey, Shannon, can you hear us? Can you join us? No. So they can still hear us. We're still having audio issues. That's okay. But
not now.
Oh, yes, Audrey, we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Audrey, do you want to share one of your read-alikes for Sex and Violence?
Yay. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for being
welcome.
What I selected is Leverage. I don't know if you can see the book right here. Absolutely fabulous. It's by Joshua Cohen. And I'm sure probably a lot of the audience can relate to how like football players are treated as royalty. Thinking back to high school, if you weren't a football player, you probably didn't stack up on the manly scale. And this is a story of how everyone usually turns their back on the things that the football players do because they're the football players. And so when a rivalry starts up between the football players and the men's gymnasts, what turns into a rivalry actually starts escalating as the play becomes more vicious and violent, and it culminates in an incredibly horrific act perpetrated by, well, I don't want to say too much, but perpetrated from one to the other. You can probably guess which one. And during this all, there's a really kind of unlikely friendship between a new student who's a fullback and one of the gymnasts, and they kind of help bridge the gap. But basically, this is a great, intense, emotionally raw story about bullying, gender expectations, sports, violence, and again, two different male voices in this, and both are authentic. So very similar in that point of view that Carrie so eloquently does in Sex and Violence. Joshua does as well in Leverage.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you, and thank you for bearing with us. And even though we're getting towards the end, thank you for joining us. Absolutely better late than never. And all of the read-alikes that we mentioned, as well as some additional read-alikes, are on a list that we have shared. So we have a tagged list of read-alikes that you can absolutely check out with your library card. Okay. Should we talk, as we're wrapping things up, should we talk books we're excited to come out, so new releases?
Oh my gosh, there are so many new releases that I just cannot wait for. Selection has a new novel coming out. Sarah Dessen has a new novel coming out. But what I absolutely cannot wait for is the new Gail Forman novel, which is supposed to be coming out at the end of January. Forman is known for her If I Stay duet, which was recently made into a movie, which was both were phenomenal.
Right.
But her new novel is called I Was Here, which is about a teenage girl named Cody, whose best friend recently committed suicide, and she has no idea why. So as Cody is packing up her friend's things, she's kind of coming to terms with what was going through her best friend's mind when she decided to commit suicide. And it's really about confronting her grief, and I have my tissues ready for the emotional roller coaster that Gail Forman will put me on.
Nice.
So.
Very good. Audrey and Shannon, do you guys have any upcoming releases that you want to share with us?
Ooh, do you want to go first, Shannon?
Oh,
Listen,
I don't.
go ahead, Shannon. Here's Shannon.
Just a new release that just came out. I'm actually on the next book on my list is Scott Westerfeld, Afterworlds.
Ooh.
It's about the girl who she is traveling to New York City to publish her teen novel, and then it goes. I like books like this where it goes alternating chapters where it tells her life and then it goes into the story. Sort of like Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. I love that one as well. So this is something that it just recently came out. So it's not coming out. So it's already out. You can get it at the library.
That's great. That's great. Audrey, any upcoming releases?
Yeah, I have a whole list, but since we're pressed for time, Courtney Summers, absolutely love her. If you haven't read any of her YA books, you should definitely grab one as soon as you can. But she has one coming up in April that's called All the Rage, and you might sense a trend here where it's the sheriff's son just happens to be the golden boy football player, but he's not exactly all that he's cracked up to be, and so a girl named Romy who calls him on it. Everyone doesn't believe her. She's from the wrong side of the track, so of course she's lying. She's just trying to hurt his reputation, blah, 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 blah. And basically what happens is a little way down the line, a girl that with ties to Romy and to Kellen goes missing, and news of him assaulting another girl gets to Romy, so she has to decide whether she wants to try again to, tell everybody what happened and to try to prevent this from happening to more girls, and then to figure out what happened to the girl that has disappeared. So again, it's a very intense read, but I can't wait for it. So.
Yeah. I love a good intense read. Sounds really good. I have a couple books I'm very excited to come out too. They're actually both coming out in March, so it seems like my spring is going to be really busy reading lots of great teen books. One of them is Shadow Scale by Rachel Hartman. I'm not sure if any of you read Serafina, but it is a teen fantasy. It takes place in a world where humans and dragons actually coexist, and there's kind of a delicate balance between humans and dragons. And the main character, Serafina, in the first one, she's the daughter of a human and a dragon, which is actually a secret. And dragons can take human forms too, which is how she is the product of a human-dragon relationship. But it's a secret that she keeps hidden. So anyway, the sequel, the companion to Serafina, Shadow Scale by Rachel Hartman, comes out in March. So I'm very excited about that. And then Lauren Oliver has a new book coming out. Right? Very exciting. I really enjoyed Panic, and I really loved Before I Fall, which were two of her other books. But Vanishing Girls is the newest book. It's about sisters, Dara and Nick. They used to be inseparable, but there was an accident that kind of left them estranged. And one of the sisters vanishes, and at first it's Dara that vanishes. Nick thinks she's just playing around, but then there's another girl who is much younger. There's a 9-year-old girl who also vanishes, so they think that it's linked. So it sounds like there's mystery. It sounds like it's going to be like intense-ish, which, as I just said, I love. So that's also coming out in March, so I'm very excited about that. So yeah, just lots of really great teen books coming out this spring. So we have a list of those as well. We created a list of upcoming books that you should check out. So we're going to share that as well on the showcase feature. So definitely check them out. And there are already records for them, so you can reserve them on your library card.
All right, well, it's about that time. So thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you, Audrey and Shannon and Megan. And so, yes, and thank you for all of your views and questions and comments and all of that fun stuff.
Yes. And thank you again for bearing with us. Sorry about the technical difficulties earlier. But yeah, this half hour just flew. And please join us next month here on Google+. Our next Hangout is actually going to be on December 22nd at 7 p.m. That'll be our next Hangout with the book. We'll be discussing The Leftovers, and we'll be talking about the best books of the year. So see you then.
Woohoo.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.